Hey guys, this is going to be a bit of a behind the scenes video, so it won't be perfectly edited and with beautiful shots. I'll probably make a separate video of the end result, but we're going to put some LED strips into my PC. Now this is my build I built a little while back. It's an X570 board with a Ryzen 3900X and currently a GTX 1080. But I'm really looking forward to the new NVIDIA Ampere, or however you want to call that, when that comes out. But this will be part one of, I think, a 2 or 3-parter series where I'm doing basically custom LED lighting inside my chassis. And if you've been following the channel, you know that I had the side panels, try and show you, laser engraved with my logo on CamZone. And I'm really wondering how that's going to look once the LED lighting is in there. So I've made a little bit of a controversial choice because I'm going with LED lighting. And the reason is I recently showed off the WWA LED strip on my channel. So that's warm white, cool white, and amber. And for part one, I think I'm going to integrate this instead of the RGB strip, which I actually had been testing over here. Or that's actually RGBW. But I think I'm going to go with this warm white. Anyway, you'll see that in the end result. That's for part one. Part two will be RGB, but I'm keeping that, well, I guess, secret. I don't know for now. So the first thing I did is basically measure some lengths. So these two are going to go into the front here. So I measured them so they wouldn't quite reach the top and wouldn't quite reach the bottom. And then I got two because these will be basically like this, and then on the other side, on this side, facing inward to hopefully again light up that laser etching. Then there's a strip that will go here on the bottom, but there's a bit of a challenge because, well, as you can see, it doesn't actually fit in between there. But I'm going to try and unscrew the fans and see if I can basically, well, lodge it in the space that's there. Hopefully that's enough, we'll see. And then I'm going to do a strip here facing towards the glass, and then a strip at the top facing down. And then we're basically back at the starting point. So if we have a animation that loops around, that should look right. And the two front ones will basically share the same data wire, so should display the same pattern. So basically, if you address this LED, both should light up. Yeah, I'll show you some, as I said, behind the scenes stuff in this video. So if you're interested in how I'm going to build this, follow along. If you'd rather watch the end result, I might have a shot here, but that's probably going to be a different video, as I said. Okay, I need to get back to it, so catch you guys in a bit. So, I'm planning out my wiring situation. Basically, from what I've measured from this WWA LED strip, it's 96 LEDs per meter. With the amount of LEDs I have, I should be fine with well, front and back end injecting it, so that should provide enough power. But what you need to take into account is that they have this little arrow on there. Let's see if I can show you that. Not sure. And that is the data direction, and that needs to be continuous. So, as I said, I want to start at the top here, come down, and where am I? Yep, move over to the side, back up, and then to the original spot. To solder these, you need to solder to these little pads. Focusing fill, what do you mean? There we go. And when cutting these, if you cut them on the pad, like you can see, for instance, in this example, well, that's pretty tight. That's just not enough to solder to. So I've made a lot of donor pixels, I guess. Since, well, I've been soldering them, and or I've been cutting them, and I wanted to have a good solder pad on each of the cuts. So basically, like you maybe not see here. There we go, like you see here. So I've been cutting these off because then I'd have a whole solder pad to solder onto. See if I can show you on this side. There you go. So yeah, be prepared. You're going to lose a few LEDs. Well, they still work, but you can't really use them in the process. And over here, I had to get them the same length because these are going down that side and this side. And I needed solder pads, so yep. I'm quickly taking a look at the back because these LEDs will need power. Now, as I said, the data and power wires will begin here and end here. So I need to get here with my power and data wires. And, well, although I have a beefy 850 watt, I don't know, it's 750 or 850, I'm not sure, watt power supply from Seasonic, titanium rated, etc., the amount of 5 volt it can deliver is, I believe, limited to 15 or 20 amps. And I don't really want to mess with that. So I got one of these. And this is basically a DC to DC converter, but then a kind of huge one. And this will do, let's see what it says, 5 volt, 80 amps, 50 amps. Okay, well, this will convert 12 volt to 5 volt, 50 amps. We're not going to need anywhere near 50 amps, but that should do. And this Lian-Li chassis has a option for a second power supply in the back, or, as it comes default fitted, this hard drive case. But I took it out. It's easy, it's just screwed in. And I was even able to put the plate back on the back so you don't really see. And it fits perfectly here. I just need to attach it with some Velcro or double-sided sticky tape or something like that. And that should be fine. And then I think I'll put my QuinLED-Dig-Unos basically, well, here on the power supply. And then I have to run the wires up and, well, I'll see how I'm going to do that. But that's, I think, the basic layout that I'm going for. Okay, I've mounted the power supply and, well, it's all Velcro so you hear it, but that's going nowhere. And I looked at the cables I still have for this power supply. So first I looked at some old Molex cables because I'm willing to sacrifice those. But those only have a single 12 volt cable, and then I believe 2 ground cables, and then a 5 volt cable? Yeah, I think so. But I also had an EPS cable laying around, so that's the 8 plug, or 2x4 basically, that you use for your motherboard power. And checking online, because, you know, we all get our information somewhere, it has 4 12 volt rails and 4 ground rails or pins or cables or whatever. And that should be more than plenty to carry the power. So I'm just going to run it over here, snip off the connector at the end, add some wire ferrules, and then connect it to the power supply. But I'll do that later. That's one of the last steps. I just wanted to figure this out. And I'm probably going to get soldering the LEDs to see how the first part looks. Okay, one of the LED strips that's going to go directly from the controller is done. I'm using a 18 gauge silicone wire and then I believe some 28 gauge silicone wire for the data. 18 gauge should provide plenty of power, especially if I'm feeding front and back end. And 28 gauge, well, it's just data, it's not that long, should be fine. And because they're separate wires, I tried my hand at, custom sleeving my wire, I guess. You can see the soldering right here on this photo. And as I said, because it's separate wire, I tried to sleeve it. Man, that's a tedious process. But this stuff comes like on a roll for like $2 a piece. And it at least keeps the wires together, and that's its main function. It makes it look a little bit nicer, so yeah. I'll have most of this stuff listed in the description if you want to do something similar, so let's carry on. So I finished most of the cabling work I needed to do, and I just need to make the LED strips, or solder the LED strips together. So what you see here is a little extension cable, I guess you could call it, using 2 of the 18 gauge and I think this is a 24 gauge, but that's for the data wire. they go to these three blocks. So there's a negative block, a positive block, and basically a data block, because this is where I split it to the two cables so that those basically, well, do the same thing. And I'm not sure how well that's showing up on camera, but that's working. So now I can continue soldering the rest of the LED strip to each other, because I basically need to have one big string before I glue the LED strip in there. Okay, soldering on. Aha, success. These were the two first cables, and now I have a little connection point here connecting to this second cable or LED strip part. Effects are working, so connection should be good. And here's a little photo of how I did this. It's basically just a few wires and some heat shrink. And the heat shrink, if you want to know, you can check the description for all the components, but you should get about 8 millimeters, because this is 12 millimeter strip. And I have a little bit smaller than that, but 8 millimeters should fit good. Okay, I'm ready to do the last part of the wiring. And this is at the end of the strip. It's now all linked together. I'll show you in a bit. And here I'm just linking plus and minus, which will go back to these little blocks, because there's a lot more copper in this cable, and that way the whole LED string will be fed on both sides, preventing voltage drop. Okay, all the soldering and wiring work is done. So to reiterate, I have my QuinLED-Dig-Uno there. It has a single cable connection to these connection blocks, which are for positive 5 volt, negative, and the data wire. The data wire is split in two, because as you can see here, these LED strips are doing exactly the same thing. And then the LED strip continues all the way down here, and there's some connection points for the LED strips I measured earlier. And then at the end of this LED strip, there is again a cable, and I sleeved it for fun, which goes back to these connection blocks to connect to the 5 volt and ground again, but not data, because data is fed in at one point. And if we now set this to solid, by the way, I'm using WLED as software to run on the QuinLED-Dig-Uno. And if you go to solid and we hit red, we can see that it gives us an amber. If we hit blue, it gives us a warm white. And if we hit a green, it gives us a cold white. And now if on the phone we select basically RGB, so all colors are, let me reset this. There we go. All colors are basically in the middle, so all channels used. Well, as you can see, that's a giant amount of light. And if I check the wattage meter, it's using about 37 to 38 watts. So that means the fuse I'm going to use is around 8 or 10 amps. I have to look what I have. And that should basically be enough in all situations, because if I go back to the effect we had earlier, well, power usage of that is, minimal. So we should be okay in most cases. And I'm currently just testing with a bench supply. We'll test it again once I attach the strip to the sides of the case. And yeah, but it's good to make sure everything's working. If I shake cable, nothing happens. Everything keeps working, so all the solder joints are good. And yeah, I'm going to stick it in my case. Okay, I've started wrangling the LED strip into the case, as you can see here. And I've used there we go, a cable clip over there and another one over there to try and manage the cables a little bit out of sight. And the nice thing is, this chassis, I think it's aluminium or steel or a combination of both. Basically, these LED strips, they have a glue layer on the back, which acts as two functions. You can stick it down, and the second function is to isolate the strip from the surface you're sticking it down to, because you want to stick it to metal to sink away the heat, for which a computer case is ideal actually, but you don't want it to short out. So you can safely stick the LED tape to the case or to a metal surface because the glue acts as an insulator. Of course, the top is still exposed, but normally you wouldn't, I mean, looking at the motherboard and all other stuff, that's also all exposed. So that shouldn't pose a real issue, really, as long as you don't short circuit it, but there's no reason why it should. Now, I just stuck it down there, and it's going to be tight with the fans, but I think I can get it to work. Okay, I couldn't help myself, so it's still rigged up to the external power supply, but I just wanted to see how it looks. I did make a few changes, so this one is now, well, I guess you can't see that, pointing inside instead of towards the glass, and the same with the one in the back, because when I turned it on the first time, you were able to see the LED strips out of the front, or where I'm mostly facing the chassis, and I don't like seeing the LEDs directly. So it's just doing a little simple pattern here, and I think it's actually a bit overexposed because these LEDs can get quite bright. So now I just have to hook it up to the power supply, and that should make it work all internally. Okay, wiring is all in. And as you can see, I've mounted the power supply and connected all the cables. I basically just decided to chop the head of that cable off, mount some wire ferrules to the cable ends, and then mount it to that DC-DC converter. A little bit of plush here. And the DC-DC converter in turn is connected to one of my QuinLED-Dig-Uno boards running WLED. And we'll see when the case panels are on if it's still able to make a Wi-Fi connection so I can control it. I think so, but yeah, we'll see. And well, that's run up here. And I had a bit of cable slack, but that was intentional. So I used another, can I show you that? Yeah, I used another cable hook there. And there is the connection points for the multiple data 5 volt and ground connections. And then it all goes to the front where you can see the LED strip. And it goes from top to bottom all the way around until it reaches the top again, and that's where it gets more voltage injected, so front and end. And well, I guess we should see if it works. So let's put power in. Let's turn the power supply on. Nothing yet. Let me dim the lights real quick. There we go. Let's dim them all, I guess. Okay, and let's hit power. And there we go. Nice. So, it worked. Let's see if I can give you a better shot. Hold on. Okay, we're now looking from the front. Let me turn it on again. And there we go. It boots up in a default profile, but you can change it using the app. And well, as you can see, it's a bunch of light. And from this angle, now you can't really see any LEDs. So I'll have to find some nice effects and stuff like that to run on it. And what looks good with these warm white, cold white, and amber strips. But all in all, it's in there. It's using the onboard power supply, using the DC-DC converter from 12 volts to 5 volts. So I have plenty of range. And as we measured, this strip isn't using more than 8 amps as it is. But as I mentioned in the beginning, this is part 1 of part 2 that I have planned for, well, LED lighting my PC, you could say. So, as I said, there will be a video showcasing some effects and what the final thing looks like with the panels on there and stuff like that. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down below. More about LEDs you can find on QuinLED.info, and things about the controller too, and tutorials and stuff on how to do this. Well, Let me know down in the comments and check QuinLED.info. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. So, that wasn't the end. This is now the next day, and it seems the glue that's on these LED strips isn't that good. I've had varying results with different LED strips and LED strip vendors and stuff like that, but I'm going to try and fix it with some double-sided sticky tape and apply those in certain spots and see if that, well, sticks better. It should. So it seems to be mostly the parts where there's like a protrusion in the case, or where there's maybe a little bit of tension because the cable is connected there. So adding just a few pads should do it. I already did it on that side. And that looks good. Okay, well, I guess this is really the end. The double-sided sticky tape worked perfectly, as you can see here, or in the top. Coming back down here. And especially in the top or in places like this where there isn't really enough clearance or enough metal to hold on to, I guess. And for instance here in the top, there's basically the rails for the chassis. And I think it'll still work, but there's just less material to hold on to, and combined with gravity, it fell down. But I think it'll stay like this. I'm not too worried about it. Okay, well, you'll see the final shots in the showcase video, and thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.